All right, guys, back on Southeastern 16 with Max Barr previewing the big games on Saturday in SEC basketball. If you're wondering why we're both smirking, it's because we probably spent more time trying to figure out what in the world to do with Tennessee as the number one team heading to Illinois on Saturday in this matchup itself than probably we'll even spend recording this video because this is such a fascinating matchup when we break this down, Max. So I'm going to let you start. There are so many different directions you could go in here. We could probably spend an hour on this game alone based on all the research up front we've tried to do just to figure out how each team seemingly has like a 50-50 in terms of the advantages in certain areas. It's wild.
This is probably the most fascinating matchup that we have had so far. Just not best matchup or, just fascinating the way the two teams match up against each other. As we record this, no betting line, and usually I have a good idea, right, where this thing's going to end based on the different analytics sites. You can kind of take an average. Blake, I really don't know, if I'm being honest. I have this as Tennessee -3. I could see it open up as a pick 'em, and you're like, whoa. I could see it open up Tennessee -5, and you're like, yep, number one team. This is probably the most, leeway I could see on a spread. I have no clue where this thing's going to open up, Blake.
I don't either. And like you said, and look, let's start with the first thing I said. Tennessee is now the number one team in the country.
Yes.
And they're heading on the road to play a team that is pretty good. And, really outside of what, Max, the disappointing loss to Northwestern. I mean, there's no shame in losing to Alabama. Now, they gave up 100. There's probably not exactly what Brad Underwood would want to see there. But the overtime loss to Northwestern, yes, it's on the resume, right? And you have to consider it now as we talk about this game. But, the upside with this team is pretty obvious in terms of what the Illini can do. And that's why I think when you look at this matchup, like, sometimes we can break down all the stats and everything too, but it is the setting in which the game is played. The number one team in the country goes on the road to play what probably at its best is a top 10-ish, 12-ish type team in college basketball. And, it's a Saturday game. That place is going to be rocking. It's Tennessee's first big test of the season in terms of this kind of setting. Again, true road game. They did play at Louisville in game 2, but Illinois is better than Louisville. And so when you put all those things in motion and then you start to look at the numbers, you're like, what do you do? Because, these two teams are just, as you said, as you'll get into, matchup-wise and stylistically, there are so many ways you can break this down and try to give an advantage to one side, but then you're like, you know what, actually, if you look at this, maybe not. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with, obviously, what Tennessee's known for, the defense, right? And you mentioned it right before we came on, and you always say it. You said it all through last year. The defense travels, right? And that's especially true with Tennessee. You see them at Louisville against a team that shoots a ton of threes. That defense traveled, holding Louisville to 55 points. There really hasn't been a bad defensive game yet for Tennessee. So I think it would be wrong of us to assume that it would change now, right? But the thing is, Illinois shoots how many threes, Blake? You had it. It was 6 in the country, was it? 4th?
They're just throwing up threes at a rapid rate. They are 4th in the country in three-point attempts per game, 33.8 per contest. They've shot 304 threes in 9 games this season.
Yeah, so, you mentioned, you can try to find an angle for both teams. This is a perfect example right here. Do you want to lean into Illinois shoots a ton of threes and they're at home and they're catching the number one team on the road and, oh boy, they could just be torching the nets? Or do you want to lean into Tennessee's perimeter defense has traveled all year, wipe out that Illinois perimeter offense because Tennessee, Ziegler, and Meshack are going to shut it down? Which way do you want to lean into? I could see both happening like 50-50, like equal chances.
Yeah, and that's where it gets interesting. Like I said, if you look at Tennessee defensively, the percentages as we go down throughout the year, 26.1%, 25.6%, 28%, 30.3%, 30%, 27.3%, 19.4%, 31.6%, 24.2%. Those are the percentages they've allowed defensively from three this season. They've only allowed two teams to make more than 8 threes this season. Most of the other teams, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 7. Like, Louisville was a team that made 10, but they went 10 of 39 for 25.6%. That game was out of hand, so you're just getting a lot of shots that are put up in that scenario. So that's something that certainly stands out here. And I do think, yes, like the defense for Tennessee, it has traveled. It has been impressive. This is a different beast, yes, because you're playing a true road game against a team like this, the best probably opponent you played this season. And so that makes it a little bit more, there's more volatility there in terms of what the outcome could be. So that's one standpoint. What's the thing we always talk about with Tennessee? I said their offense is way further along than I thought they'd be at this point. Because we said we didn't know if it was just going to be an equal 1-versus-1 substitution where Chaz Lanier is going to sub in for Dalton Connect. He's not been that far off to this point based on how good he's been offensively. And so that's why they're further along. They're shooting 37.7% from three themselves. That's top 50 in the country. They are the best team in the country in 2-point percentage, 63% from two right now. They're top 10-ish in offensive rebounding percentage. They're third in effective field goal percentage, 60.2%. So it's like now you play a team like this, probably the best opponent, as we said, you played this season. If those numbers come down a little bit, can you expect those same type of efficient percentages? Maybe not in this particular matchup. And so then it becomes, all right, is this one of those games, Max, where Tennessee has that lull where it's kind of that, infamous lull that's maybe they go 5 or 6 minutes without scoring a field goal or something. That's where the Illinois 3-point attempts, the number of attempts they have, if Tennessee goes 5 or 6 minutes without scoring, Illinois comes out and hits 3 straight threes, all of a sudden the game is flipped. And so I think it's like that's why this adds a little bit more unpredictability. It's not that we're predicting that is going to happen, but it's these kind of scenarios when you talk about two heavyweight opponents like this and you see what they've done to this point, that's where, again, it adds a little bit more, I think, unpredictability as to what's going to happen. But before we get to you, Max, quickly remind you about our friends at BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting, from the earliest odds to in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with all the action and ability to watch the games as they happen. If you want to bet on this game, you can, because they have the largest selection of odds on everything for football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, and the UFC. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget, use that promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here.
So we were talking a lot about Tennessee's defense, but Illinois has got a really good defense as well. I mean, it's not to the level of Tennessee's, but still a top 20 defense in the country here. I mean, they're 8th right now in 3-point percentage defense, 18th 2-point percentage defense. They don't foul that much. They're 41st in foul rate, keeping that low. They're 6th tallest in the country, average height per roster, 6th tallest. So how is that super efficient Tennessee paint offense going to look? How is Milicic going to do down low in this game? The Tennessee defense is going to offer some resistance that did I say Tennessee defense or Illinois defense? The Illinois defense is going to offer.
Well, they're both going to do it. So.
They're all both going to do it. But the point I'm trying to make here, we're going crazy. The point I'm trying to make is that this might be the best defense that Tennessee has faced so far this year. I know they played Baylor and Virginia. They're both down this year. I think this is the best defense Tennessee has played so far, Blake.
Well, and it is, again, the setting. Like, you're playing the best defense you played. You're playing it in a rowdy environment. And that's where I'm curious about Tennessee offensively. It's not, like I said, it's not a concern. It is just this is a different
in this game
test. Yeah, in this particular game, it's a different test because, I mean, you're the number one team in the country, as we said. Like, the target's on your back now. Like, that's how this works. And, it's like ask Kansas, right, about what happens when you play those road games, number one team in the country. And, like, you just keep going down the line here where there is a lot more incentive now for the opposition to say, hey, we just went out and beat the number one team in the country. And so let's just get the picks because, again, we could maneuver around all these different storylines and everything in this game for hours probably, just based on, again, these are two really good teams, and I think it's such an interesting spot for Tennessee here on the road. But I'm curious where you're going to go, Max, on this one.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned it's, the Kansas comparison there because, Champaign is going to be blowing the roof off the State Farm Center for this one. I mean, this thing is it's going to be a madhouse in there. So that's definitely going to be a factor. But like one thing we haven't talked about is Yakuchonis and Boswell in the backcourt. Jeez, I am losing my mind right now. Absolutely losing it. This game is driving me up the wall.
They're running the I formation against the Vols here in this game. Little wishbone, triple option. All right.
They might pull it out. But I was mentioning it to you before we recorded. Who do you put Ziegler on? And then who do you put Meshack on? Now, if Max Barr is the coach, which he's not, you put Meshack on Yakuchonis for that size at 6'6". Either way, whether it's Ziegler, whether it's Meshack, whoever's on him, it's going to be the best guard defender he's faced this year. Now, he has been absolutely fantastic. He's got the size advantage. He's been on a roll against the best teams. He's had his best performances. But I think Meshack, Ziegler, stymie the Illinois guards just to a point to keep it close, but not close enough. Ball Nation, I am sorry. Illinois gets it done at home.
All right. Max Barr going with the Illini here in this particular game. And again, I can give you every reason as to why many would agree with you. However, many are not on this particular video because you know what I always say, Max, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Right now, the Vols, via the AP poll, are the man. And until somebody beats them, I keep looking at a couple particular things in this matchup. We talked about our guy, Evan Maya, and the numbers he does.
Yes.
The top 5-man lineups in the country. Tennessee is still number one with the lineup of Lanier, Meshack, Milicic, Okpara, and Ziegler. And they are more than, the percentages there at number one and the number two, there is a wide gap in terms of how efficient they've been this season with that group. And that is not even counting in a Jordan Gainey and the guys off the bench that have played a role for this team. And there is something else that Tennessee has an advantage in this particular matchup. What does Tennessee start and rotate with in this game? Senior, 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 junior, senior. You get the thought here that they are experienced. I know this is the first huge matchup of the season in terms of this kind of setting. Having the target on your back is number one. But these guys are battle tested like throughout their careers, not just in this season. And so I feel like they're sort of embracing this a little bit because I do think they hear the talk that, you know what, is Tennessee really as good as people say they are? Because have they played the schedule that Auburn or Alabama, Kentucky? I think they hear that. And so until I see somebody beat them, I'm going to pick Tennessee in this game. I think this is absolutely the spot where it could happen because, like I said, I almost feel like Illinois, it's different. But just because Illinois has a 2 beside them and they lost in a game to Northwestern in overtime, which, by the way, we didn't really bring that up in terms of the breakdown. What does Northwestern do? They also play a tempo that is going to make it a half-court game. If Tennessee does that, whereas Illinois, they get up and down the court. We know that. I think that could also play into Tennessee's favor here. So I'm going to pick the Vols. It's a tough spot. And like with you, I think the story that will tell maybe how this game's going to go, what is that spread when it comes out?
Yes.
Because I think that is going to be – that's going to tell a lot about what people think about this game or what Vegas thinks about this game. So I'm curious to see what happens. We'll see how it unfolds. We'll talk about it on Saturday because this game is played at what time, Max?
Isn't it right middle of the day?
So my guess is we actually might go live right after this game.
Yeah.
Because, we'll have some other games already in the books by that point, Auburn, Ohio State, Kentucky, Louisville, and so forth. So if you guys want to come talk about this one afterwards, you can. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. We go live almost every day here at Southeastern 16 talking SEC basketball throughout the season. So subscribe, turn on your notifications. We'll be talking about this one and all the other games in the SEC this weekend. So we appreciate you watching as always, and we'll talk to you again soon at Southeastern 16.